So, one of the most intriguing quarterback battles in the entirety of college football now has been decided because not long ago, Steve Sarkisian announced that Quinn Ewers is going to be the starter for the Texas Longhorns in 2022. And today, we need to break down why this is such a big deal. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill, I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Do you believe Quinn Ewers will find success as Texas's starter? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. We're on our push to 15,000 subscribers, and this is an unbelievable community, a community I'd love to have you be a part of. And if you enjoyed the content, like and comment down below. But having said all that, let's jump right into this because this is a big deal for the Texas fan base. It's not every day that you get in a former five-star quarterback out the transfer portal, even more rare that that former five-star was rated as a perfect one and has ties to your state. This was a perfect situation when Texas fans found out that Quinn Ewers was going to be the starting quarterback. Because over the past few days, there's been a lot of questions as to is Quinn Ewers going to be able to separate from Hudson Card, or even could Hudson Card be the starting quarterback for the Texas Longhorns? I think this was an incredibly close quarterback battle, but one thing I've always thought of when I'm thinking about quarterback battles is if you have two guys that are really close to one another and you don't know which way to lean, you're probably better served going with the one with higher upside because in theory, their ability to grow could be greater. Now, once again, that's in theory, and notice I said the word could, but the fact remains that seems to be what's happened here. Because I don't think anybody would deny the upside Quinn Ewers has, it's just the experience in the college game that he lacks. And even though this is year number 2 in college for Quinn Ewers, that's something we need to unpack a little bit. Because yes, last year around this time, Quinn Ewers arrived at Ohio State for their camp, but one thing we need to realize is if you're arriving this late into a camp, you're not going to really be given a fair shake at an ability to try and earn meaningful playing time, especially at the quarterback position. The reason is the starter's probably already established, and the coaching staff is going to be much better served establishing their number 2 guy and developing their number 2 guy than worrying about a guy who just walked through the doors, no matter how talented they may be. And another thing we need to understand is that Ohio State quarterback room is loaded. Go back through their previous recruiting classes, look at the quarterbacks they've picked up, and it's going to be really hard to work your way up that depth chart if everybody in the room has more experience than you. And plus, like I said, if you're Ryan Day and the coaches, you're going to train up the guy who's number 2, whoever that may be, over Quinn Ewers, because if CJ Stroud goes down, you want that guy to have the best understanding. You don't want to have to worry about trying to split so much time. So I was never super surprised whenever Quinn Ewers wasn't able to rise up the depth chart. But let's refocus on what this means for the Texas Longhorns. Because Texas now gets a guy who's from the state of Texas, who was a former 5-star recruit and had a perfect rating that has meant so much to their program already. That's the guy that's going to be the starter. And even though he hasn't played a down for the Texas Longhorns, he was a huge win for Texas whenever he announced he was transferring there. Because when he announced he was transferring there, it just ignited a fire in that transfer portal class for Texas and allowed them to go out there and get some really talented pieces. Pieces that many in the Texas Longhorn fan base are very excited to see this year. So already, we've seen a positive effect from Quinn Ewers, much like we've seen a positive effect from Arch Manning. The difference is now Quinn's positive effect can turn tangible sooner rather than later. And look, like I alluded to earlier in this video, I have no doubt that this was a close quarterback competition. If you listen to those around the program, they remain high on Hudson Card, but likewise, they remain very high on Quinn Ewers' upside, because one thing you constantly hear, there's really not a place on the football field that guy can't hit with the football. He has got an incredibly live arm. It's just all about the development part at this point. So if you're Steve Sarkisian, this is a bit of a double-edged sword, because on one side, this is best case scenario. When Quinn Ewers announced that he was transferring to Texas, many in the Texas fan base, and I'm sure many in the Texas coaching staff, were assuming he would probably take over that role. Now, nothing was going to be gifted. It had to be earned, but you understand the point. point. Now time has passed, and that's the role he's going to be given, is starting quarterback. But at the same time, the double-edged sword comes when you cannot be in the same situation you were in a year ago, where you named a starting quarterback, and a few weeks later, you're having to switch starting quarterbacks, especially for a guy like Quinn Ewers, because you want to try and build up his confidence. The last thing you want to do is name him the starting quarterback and give him a short leash, because that's not going to do him any favors. So while I know Texas fans are very excited about this, I know the nation is very curious about what this is going to lead to. What's Quinn Ewers going to look like? Because week 2, he's facing a huge test as the Crimson Tide are coming in, and we already know the type of edge rushing capability they have. So Texas fans, I know you're over the moon about this. I can't wait to hear from you. Drop down in the comments, let me know what you're thinking, and even if you're not a Texas fan, I'm sure you have an opinion about this, and I can't wait to hear it. Be sure to drop down there, let me know, and let me know what you're thinking about this whole situation, because I find this really interesting. This is a huge win for Steve Sarkisian, but simultaneously, the last thing you need is a repeat of what we saw last year. That's something that I don't think the Texas Longhorns can afford, especially when you have a fan base, when you have an institution that is as ravenous for getting back on track as the Texas Longhorns are. I don't think it's an institution that would make the coaching hires they did, to make the transfer portal acquisitions they did, and then to be as involved in NIL as they are, if the fans, the institutions, and the coaches weren't all on the same page with trying to get the institution back to prominence. Can this be a move that helps them in that direction? Something we have to see. But I can't wait to hear from y'all. That's it. See ya.